These 12 foods could become extremely valuable in the coming months. Not because they are about to disappear from supermarkets, but because the most ordinary items are losing the advantage that once made millions of families feel secure every time they went shopping. In just the past few years, retail beef prices in the United States have increased by nearly 50%, forcing many families to reduce portions or switch to cheaper protein sources. This is no longer just the story of a piece of meat. It is a sign that pressure is slowly spreading into the American kitchen itself. What is worth noticing is that when one food rises in price, it rarely rises alone. Climate change, energy costs, transportation, production, and supply chains are creating a domino effect, causing items that were once considered cheap and always available to become more expensive month by month. But what surprised me the most was not beef. It was the item ranked number 7, a food once found in ancient Egyptian tombs, almost impossible to spoil. So what are the 12 most important foods to watch in the coming months? And why could ordinary items today become some of the most sought-after items tomorrow? Let's begin right away with the first position, 12. Beef. There is a moment that is repeating itself in many supermarkets across America. A grandfather takes his grandchild grocery shopping on the weekend. He stops in front of the meat counter, picks up a tray of ground beef, looks at the price tag for a few seconds, then silently puts it back where it was. The grandchild asks, "Grandpa, aren't you making hamburgers anymore?" He just smiles and pushes the cart forward. Maybe that is only a very small story, but it reflects what is happening to millions of American families. Just a few years ago, many common types of retail beef cost around $6 per pound. By 2026, the average price had climbed to about $9.6 per pound, up nearly 50% and continuing to set new highs. A food that once appeared regularly on the dinner table is now becoming an expense that makes many families think twice before putting it in the cart. And what is worrying is that this is not a normal price increase. The story begins with cracked, dry pastures. In Texas, Kansas, and many major cattle-producing states, years of repeated drought have made natural grass disappear faster than it can recover. Ranchers have to buy more feed, while the cost of corn, fuel, transportation, and labor has all risen. Many farms have been forced to reduce their herds just to survive. As a result, America now has only about 86 million cattle and calves left, the lowest level in about 75 years. That is not just a statistic. It is the explanation for why a summer BBQ, a pot of beef stew, or a tray of ground beef for the whole week is becoming more and more expensive. A small restaurant owner once shared that customers used to ask which dish was the best. Now, the most common question is, which dish is the cheapest? Restaurants are not the only ones changing. Families are changing too. Many people are buying less. Many people are dividing portions into smaller amounts. Many people are switching to other types of protein just to keep the grocery bill from going over budget. What worries experts is that cattle herds cannot recover after just one rainy season. For a calf to become part of the market supply, it takes years of care and investment. That means even if the weather improves, supply will still need a lot of time to catch up with demand. So what makes beef extremely valuable in the coming months is not that it will disappear from supermarkets. It is that more and more families will face the same very familiar choice: keep buying the way they did before, or change the entire menu just because of one price tag. That is also why many people are taking advantage of sales to buy just enough and store it properly for their families. Not because of panic, but because they understand one very simple thing. When an essential food increases by nearly half its value in just a few years, the most valuable thing is no longer the piece of beef on the dinner table, but the feeling that you still have a choice when you walk into the supermarket. Does your family still buy beef as often as before? Or have you started switching to chicken, beans, eggs, or canned meat to cut costs? 11. Coffee. Coffee is one of the strangest items in the American shopping cart. It is not an essential food in the survival sense. No one needs coffee to live. But for millions of people, a morning without coffee feels like a day that begins off rhythm. That is why, when coffee prices rise, consumers do not respond by giving it up immediately. They usually keep buying it, just with more frustration, more regret over the money, and they begin paying attention to every ounce in the package. The current price shock is no longer a vague feeling. According to retail price data in the United States, the average price of roasted ground coffee had reached about $9.72 per pound in April 2026, the highest level since this data series began being tracked in 1980. This number is not just a few cents higher. It shows that coffee in American supermarkets has moved into a completely new price level. The biggest cause lies in global supply, especially two countries that play an extremely important role: Brazil and Vietnam. Brazil is the world's largest coffee producer, especially important for Arabica. Vietnam is a Robusta powerhouse, the type of bean used heavily in instant coffee, blends, and many budget coffee products. When both of these major supply sources come under pressure, coffee prices do not just rise in the premium segment, but spread down to even the most affordable products. In Brazil, coffee-growing regions have gone through severe drought, unstable weather, and frost events that damaged crops. Coffee is not like vegetables that can be replanted in a few months. A coffee tree needs years to recover its productivity. If frost or drought damages a tree today, the market may still feel the impact for many harvest seasons afterward. Reuters once noted that Arabica prices rose about 70% in 2024, reaching a historic level in early 2025, while Robusta also rose sharply as Vietnam's supply was affected by bad weather. The problem is this: coffee is a habit, not something people easily cut out. When meat becomes expensive, many families can switch to something else. But with coffee, many people only switch to a cheaper brand, buy a smaller package, or accept the higher price. That keeps demand very sticky, even as prices rise. So coffee could become extremely valuable in the coming months, not because it disappears from supermarkets, but because every package of coffee will carry more pressure with it. Whether in Brazil, drought in Vietnam, transportation costs, roasting, packaging, and a global demand that almost refuses to back down. The problem is not that Americans will stop drinking coffee. The problem is that they will keep drinking it, but every morning will become a little more expensive. If coffee prices keep rising, will you switch to a cheaper brand, buy less, or keep your daily coffee habit no matter what? 10. Olive oil. A retired woman in California once had the habit of drizzling olive oil over her salad every evening. It was not a luxury item. It was just a small part of the healthy lifestyle she had maintained for many years. But recently, while standing in front of the shelf, she picked up the familiar bottle, saw the price was nearly $25, and switched to a smaller bottle. Not because she no longer needed it, but because something that used to feel very ordinary was starting to feel like something that had to be used sparingly. That is the unique pain of olive oil. It does not make people hungry immediately, but it changes the way they cook, the way they take care of their health, and the way they look at each everyday meal. Just a few years ago, many bottles of extra virgin olive oil at American supermarkets were still around $10 to $12. Today, it is not hard to see similar bottles selling for $18 to $25, and some brands have even more than doubled compared with the period before 2022. For families that use olive oil regularly, this is no longer a small increase in the grocery bill. It is a sign that a healthy habit is becoming more expensive. The biggest cause begins in the Mediterranean. Spain, Italy, and Greece are important regions in the global olive oil supply. But years of drought, record temperatures, and low rainfall have put olive trees under heavy pressure. Olive trees can tolerate drought better than many other crops, but they cannot keep resisting extremely hot summers and prolonged dry soil forever. When there are fewer olives, smaller olives, and less oil pressed from them, supply falls very quickly. The pressure also continues after the harvest season. Growers have to pay more for irrigation water, electricity, labor, glass bottles, transportation, and packaging. A bottle of oil on the shelf does not only carry the price of olives, it carries the cost of climate, energy, and an entire production chain that is becoming more expensive. What is worrying is that olive production cannot recover after just one rainy season. If Spain, Italy, or Greece continues to face unfavorable weather, olive oil prices could remain high for many more months. Olive oil is becoming valuable not because it disappears from the kitchen, but because many families will start pouring less, buying smaller bottles, and saving it only for meals that truly deserve it. And when even a healthy habit has to be considered with every use, that is when a small bottle of oil begins to say a lot about the cost of living in America today. Do you still use olive oil regularly in your daily meals? Or have you switched to another oil because the price is too high? 9. Spices. There is something very few people think about when preparing food for their families. What makes a meal hard to eat is not always a lack of food, but a lack of flavor. A bag of rice can still fill your stomach. A can of beans can still provide energy. A box of pasta can still get you through a meal. But if every meal is bland, repetitive, and missing the familiar aroma you are used to, eating quickly changes from feeling cared for to feeling like a task you have to get through. That is when jars of black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, cinnamon, paprika, or dried herbs tucked away in the corner of the kitchen cabinet become far more valuable than their size suggests. Few people realize that this small category of products is under pressure from an extremely long supply chain. Black pepper depends heavily on Vietnam. Many traditional spices come from India. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and many tropical spices are closely tied to Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Before they appear in a small jar on a supermarket shelf in America, they have already gone through growing seasons, harvesting, drying, sorting, packaging, ocean shipping, and distribution across multiple layers of the supply chain. It only takes a change in weather in one major producing region for prices to move very quickly. Prolonged heat, irregular rainfall, and extreme climate events have reduced harvests in many spice-growing areas. When production falls, purchasing costs rise. When fuel, transportation, and packaging costs increase at the same time, even a small jar of spices is no longer a small expense. As a result, many families are beginning to notice something frustrating. The familiar spice jar is still there, but it is smaller, more expensive, or runs out faster than before. An extra $1 or $2 may not seem shocking at first, but when black pepper, garlic powder, cinnamon, paprika, oregano, and many other spices all become more expensive, the kitchen quietly becomes a much costlier place. But flavor is different. It does not appear on the nutrition label. It is not measured in grams of protein or calories. Yet flavor determines something very real, whether you still want to eat that same meal on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th day. Spices do not provide many calories, but sometimes they are the very thing that determines whether your entire food supply gets eaten or simply sits untouched in the kitchen cabinet. 8. Canned tomatoes. Some foods never become the star of the meal, but as soon as they are missing, the entire kitchen immediately becomes awkward. Canned tomatoes are one of those foods. On a busy evening, you still have pasta, ground meat, or a few cans of beans in the pantry. Just add 1 can of tomatoes, and everything quickly turns into pasta sauce, chili, soup, or stew for the whole family. That small can does not stand out, but it is the foundation of hundreds of familiar recipes. What is worth noticing is that an ingredient once considered one of the cheapest items in the pantry is gradually losing that advantage. Many cans of tomatoes used to sit around the $1 price range, but today shoppers can easily see prices from $1.50 to nearly $2, depending on the brand and area. The increase is not large on each can, but for families that cook regularly, the monthly grocery bill changes very clearly. The pressure begins in California, the center of America's processed tomato industry. Prolonged drought, tighter irrigation water supplies, and extreme temperatures have made production less stable than before. Then come a series of other costs: steel for cans, energy for factories, transportation, and labor have all increased, pushing up the cost of a product that seems very simple. If the weather remains unfavorable and packaging costs do not cool down, canned tomatoes will likely remain under pressure in the coming months. So when you find a reasonable price, buying a moderate amount more is a way to keep your family's familiar meals ready without putting pressure on the budget. A can of tomatoes is not the whole dinner, but sometimes it is the very thing that connects all the remaining ingredients into a complete meal. What does your family use canned tomatoes for the most? Pasta, chili, soup, or your own recipe? Share below so everyone can learn from it. 7. Honey. There are very few foods that make people feel as if time can almost never defeat them. Honey is one of them. Stories about honey found in ancient Egyptian tombs still amaze many people, because if stored properly, it can maintain its quality for a very long time. But the paradox is this: something that can last for thousands of years is depending on an extremely fragile ecosystem. A person walks into the supermarket to buy the familiar bottle of honey for an evening cup of tea. They look at the price longer, read the label more carefully, and wonder whether what they are holding is pure honey or just a blended product. It is not only the price that is changing, consumer trust is changing with it. In recent years, many types of pure honey in the United States have risen noticeably in price, especially local honey or raw honey. At the same time, the market has also seen more products with blended ingredients or labeling that makes buyers more cautious before deciding. The cause begins with bee colonies. Extreme weather, parasites, shrinking habitats, and pressure in beekeeping operations have reduced honey production, while the cost of maintaining colonies has continued to rise. But bees do not only create honey. They also help pollinate many crops, from fruits to nuts and vegetables. So every bottle of honey also reflects the health of an entire ecosystem behind it. If climate conditions continue to fluctuate, pure honey will likely remain expensive, and products with transparent sourcing will increasingly become the choice consumers prioritize. Honey is valuable not only because it can be stored for a very long time. It is valuable because it reminds us that even the things that seem most durable still depend on the very fragile balance of nature. Are you willing to pay more for pure honey from a trusted source? Or do you usually choose the lower-priced option? Share your perspective below. 6. Dry beans. There is something very interesting happening in American supermarkets. When meat prices rise, many people do not head for the premium food section. They bend down to the lowest shelf and pick up a bag of dry beans. A grandfather in his 70s once put 4 bags of beans into his shopping cart instead of a tray of beef. The person standing next to him looked surprised. He simply smiled and said, "This one bag can feed the whole family for several meals. That is not just a feeling." A 1-pound bag of dry beans can produce about 10 to 12 servings after soaking and cooking, while providing plant-based protein and the fiber that many modern meals are lacking. Very few foods in the supermarket offer such a low cost per serving. What makes beans special is that they are not becoming more expensive because of the beans themselves. Dry beans are becoming more sought after as beef, chicken, and many other protein sources continue to get more expensive. When millions of families start looking for a more affordable option, demand quietly rises for a food that was once considered too ordinary. Unlike many foods that require electricity or a freezer, dry beans can be stored for years in dry, airtight conditions and are easy to combine with rice, tomatoes, spices, or vegetables to create a complete meal at a very low cost. What is surprising is that beans rarely appear in flashy advertisements or on lists of premium foods. They simply sit quietly on the shelf until the family budget starts to tighten. Dry beans are not competing with a steak. They simply remind us that in a smart kitchen, real value is sometimes found in the least expensive item. What do you think? If meat prices continue to rise, will dry beans become a more regular part of your family's dinner table? 5. Powdered milk. People often buy insurance for their home, their car, or their health. But very few people think about preparing nutritional insurance for their own kitchen. Powdered milk is one of those choices. A retired woman living with her 2 young grandchildren always keeps an unopened container of powdered milk in the kitchen cabinet. She says it is the item that helps her sleep better whenever a storm comes or shopping is disrupted. Not because she is afraid of running out of food, but because she knows her family still has a reliable source of nutrition. What few people notice is that a standard container of powdered milk can make dozens of glasses of milk, providing protein and calcium for growing children, as well as older adults who need to maintain bone and muscle health. While many other foods quickly spoil if the power goes out, powdered milk can still be stored for a long time when unopened and kept properly. Yet this seemingly ordinary food is under pressure from the cost of animal feed, energy, packaging, transportation, and processing. If just one link in the chain becomes more expensive, consumers will quickly see it on supermarket shelves through a smaller container or a higher price. What makes powdered milk special is not that it is a rare food. It is that on days when every plan is disrupted, it still helps many families maintain a stable source of nutrition without depending completely on the cold supply chain. A container of powdered milk does not only contain protein and calcium. It also contains the peace of mind that children still have a glass of milk in the morning, and grandparents still have a familiar source of nutrition, even when shopping is no longer as convenient as before. If you could choose only one item to protect your family's long-term nutrition, would you choose powdered milk or another food? Share your reason below. 4. Rice. There are not many foods capable of feeding more than half of the world's population. Rice is one of them. Because it is so familiar, many people only realize its value when the bag of rice in the kitchen starts getting lighter. A chef at a small restaurant once said that if he runs out of meat, he can still replace it with eggs or beans. But if he runs out of rice, the entire menu has to change. That simple-sounding statement reflects the special role of a food that appears in billions of meals every day. What is worth noticing is that the rice market does not depend only on one country's harvest. If just one major exporting country limits sales or extreme weather reduces production, prices can spread very quickly across the international market. In recent years, drought, heat, and the El Niño phenomenon have added more pressure to supply in many important rice-growing regions, while global demand has remained very high. Few people notice that a bag of rice does not only reflect the price of the grain itself. It also contains the cost of fertilizer, fuel, transportation, storage, and even export decisions made by major producing countries. When many links in the chain are under pressure at the same time, a food long known for stability also begins to change in price. What is surprising is that in many crises, consumers do not usually buy a lot of meat or candy first. They turn to rice first because it is filling, familiar, and can be combined with almost every other ingredient left in the kitchen. Rice is not the most expensive food on the table, but if one day it also becomes harder to access, many families will feel the pressure from the very first meal. In your opinion, if you had to store only one type of starch for your family, would you choose rice or another option? 3. Pasta. There was once a time when a box of pasta was the symbol of a budget-friendly dinner. Just add a little sauce, some tomatoes, or a few meatballs, and the whole family had a full meal at a very low cost. A mother in America shared that she used to always buy 3 or 4 boxes every time she went to the supermarket because it was both cheap and easy to cook. But recently, the first thing she looks at is no longer the brand, but the price tag. What is surprising is that pasta is not becoming more expensive only because of wheat. Behind every box of dry pasta is an entire chain of costs, including energy for milling and drying, paper or plastic packaging, long-distance transportation, and factory operations. If each link increases just a little, the final product changes significantly. The global wheat market is also constantly affected by extreme weather, fertilizer costs, fuel, and disruptions in the logistics chain. When the basic ingredient is no longer stable, a food once seen as a budget solution gradually loses its natural advantage. Few people realize that pasta is one of the foods with a very low cost per meal and a long shelf life, so demand often rises whenever consumers want to cut their budget. That very fact adds more pressure to supply during difficult economic periods. A box of pasta is not just dry noodles. It represents the idea that a family can still eat well at a reasonable cost. And when that idea begins to become more expensive, the grocery bill changes with it. Does your family still see pasta as a budget-friendly meal? Or have you recently started switching to other options to reduce costs? 2. Cooking oil. You can live without sauce. You can switch fried dishes to boiled ones. But if the kitchen is completely out of oil, many meals immediately become harder to manage. A mother opens the refrigerator after work. There are still eggs, vegetables, leftover rice, and a little meat in the house. But the bottle of cooking oil has only a few drops left at the bottom. Dinner does not disappear, but everything becomes harder. Harder to stir-fry, harder to fry, harder to make a quick meal, harder to turn separate ingredients into a real meal. Cooking oil is not the main dish, but it is what connects the entire kitchen. It helps food cook faster, creates more concentrated energy, and makes simple foods like rice, vegetables, beans, eggs, or pasta much easier to eat. What is worrying is that cooking oil is under pressure from many sides at once. Palm oil depends on production in Southeast Asia. Soybean oil is affected by weather, farming costs, and demand for animal feed. Sunflower oil was once heavily affected by supply disruptions from the Black Sea region. Meanwhile, part of the vegetable oil supply is also being pulled into biofuel demand, forcing the food market to compete with the energy market. The surprising detail is that when cooking oil prices rise, the impact does not stop at one bottle of oil on the shelf. It spreads into bread, canned goods, sauces, frozen meals, fried foods, fast food, and almost every processed product that uses fat. Shoppers think they are only paying more for one bottle of oil, but in reality, many other items are quietly carrying that cost too. So when you find a reasonable price, cooking oil is an item worth keeping in moderate backup, especially for families that cook regularly. There is no need to buy too much, because oil can also lose quality if stored incorrectly. But if you run out completely, the kitchen immediately loses its flexibility. Some things are only remembered when they are gone. And cooking oil is one of the things that makes people realize sometimes a meal is not missing ingredients. It is only missing the thing that helps all those ingredients become dinner. What type of oil does your family use the most? Soybean oil, canola oil, olive oil, or another kind? 1. Oats. There was once a time when a bowl of oats was the most budget-friendly choice for breakfast. No complicated cooking, no need for many ingredients, just hot water, milk, a little sugar, or fruit was enough to make a filling meal. A retired person stands in front of the supermarket shelf, holding the familiar container of oats and looking at the price longer than usual. This used to be something they bought without thinking, but when even the cheapest breakfast starts to become more expensive, it is no longer just about a container of oats. It is a sign that the family budget is being squeezed by even the smallest things. Oats are seen as a humble food, but behind them is an entire vulnerable supply chain. Production depends on weather in major growing regions. Drought, unstable temperatures, and poor harvests can reduce supply. Then come the costs of drying, rolling, packaging, transportation, and getting the product onto shelves. What is surprising is that oats are no longer just food for people trying to save money. The healthy eating trend has turned them into an ingredient for granola, oat milk, energy bars, breakfast baked goods, and many other healthy products. When demand rises from both budget-conscious consumers and the health food market, an item that once sat in the affordable corner of the supermarket begins to be pulled into a larger competition. For older adults, oats also have their own value. Easy to eat, soft, high in fiber, and suitable for light breakfasts. So when prices rise, the people affected are not only younger shoppers buying healthy products, but also families that once relied on oats as a stable, cheap, and easy-to-prepare breakfast. If the weather continues to be unstable and processing costs do not fall, oats may no longer keep their image as the default cheap food they once were. A poor man's food sometimes becomes the first luxury item, not because it has become more elegant, but because even simplicity is starting to cost more. Do you still see oats as a budget-friendly breakfast? Or has their recent price made you think again? Perhaps the most thought-provoking thing after this list is not which item will rise in price the fastest, but the fact that so many ordinary foods are all under pressure from climate, supply chains, and production costs. A can of tomatoes, a bag of oats, or a bottle of cooking oil may not worry you today, but when they all become more expensive together, the family kitchen will be the first place to feel the change. Preparing does not mean panicking or filling the house with food. Preparing means understanding what is happening and taking advantage of reasonable price moments to protect your budget. Now, I really want to hear your opinion. Among these 12 foods, which one do you think will become the most valuable in the coming months? And which one does your family always try to keep on hand? Share in the comments, because your experience may help many other people.